Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's Down and Dirty. We're going to get into a little more detail onto loading trucks. And this one today, as you can see, this is an on-road truck. I am going to fair warn you, I am loading pretty aggressive because I have a little itty bitty excavator for these trucks. And so I've told you guys in the past, when you load on-road trucks, you generally don't want to be as messy. But we're going to be messy today because I can clean the side rails pretty easy. Actually, this truck doesn't even really have fat side rails, so I don't have to worry about getting super messy. And the design on this truck doesn't really hold dirt. So yeah, I'm splashing it with dirt and everything. I'm sure somebody's going to complain, but whatever. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, because we're sitting up on a pile and we can actually see into the truck, I want to talk about the concept of actually loading a truck and how you should approach it. So what I generally like to do is, depending on where I'm at in the truck or in relation to the truck, I always like to start at the front and then work my way back. And as you can see, I've actually been loading here for a couple minutes. You can see that. You can see that we've got a little material kind of sitting up in the truck. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start kind of overlapping our buckets by about half, because as you can see, that material is hitting that pile and it's rolling down. And so naturally, if we keep staggering our buckets, we're naturally just going to fill this whole truck at about the height of this pile. And that is about the height you want to be at to have a full load without overloading your truck. And so we're going to grab another bucket, we're going to swing her over top, and we're, like I said, we're going to overlap by about half, maybe a little less, and let that material roll down. Now, the reason I wanted to show you guys this in this position is because we will do another video, and it's going to happen later today, so it will be a separate video, but eventually we're not going to have a pile to sit on. And if we don't have a pile to sit on, that means that we're loading in the blind. So how can we possibly do that? Well, a big part of it is having a consistent pattern to loading your trucks. Because once we get to a point where we can feel the dirt in the blind with our bucket, we know that we are at the right level, and then we're just going to start overlapping our buckets. So to be able to visualize what's happening here is going to help us when we're trying to load this truck in the blind. Now, when I say I load trucks, differently depending on how I'm set up in relation to the truck, sometimes you can't really reach all the way to the front. And so what I'll do in that case is I'll reach as far as I can, which in this excavator will honestly get me about here. And I will actually load that part until it's about this tall. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bucket and I'm going to shove up into the front of the truck. And I'm going to do that a couple times, and that will get as much material as I can possibly reach into the front of that truck. Again, that's if I'm sitting at the very back of the truck and I can't reach all the way forward. If you're loading from the side, that problem totally goes away because you're going to be able to reach the full truck. As always, when you're loading a truck, especially these on-road trucks, you do want to be relatively gentle. We're not going to be bombing the truck necessarily like you would in an off-road truck. You can see that I'm actually uncurling my bucket at a nice steady rate to allow that dirt to flow out, as opposed to if you've seen the off-road haul truck video, I will actually use my stick and do a little stick flick to force the material out of my bucket. I'm not going to do that with an on-road truck. You don't want to not only jostle your driver, which will upset him, but you will also cause the truck to sway. You could break something. It's really hard on the springs and the airbags. So you want to be gentle with these on-road trucks. These are not the tanks that the off-road trucks are. So what we're going to do is just continue to work our way to the back of the truck, and you can see that because I'm overlapping my buckets, we're getting a good consistent load. The other thing we want to pay attention to here is notice how centered that load is. We don't want it all the way to one side or the other, because then what happens when the truck goes to dump? Well, best case scenario, he dumps on a nice flat level surface and you've still got weight that's wanting to take that box over. But think about it, if we had all of that weight over on the far side of the box, and then he went on his dump site, is just tilted a little to the right. Now you have all of that weight that's trying to take the box over. That's where you as an operator can 100% be responsible for a truck going over. Now, there's a responsibility on the driver to know what he's doing, but at the same time, if the driver, drivers don't get up to see how you've got the box loaded. And so if the driver doesn't have any idea that you've got all of this weight up against one side of the truck, he doesn't account for that when he goes to dump. Totally unbeknownst to him, you've set him up for failure. So it's very important to keep that load centered. That's gonna come with time and practice. So, you know, if you're a little off in the beginning, it's not that big of a deal. I would say, you know, this is a skill to practice. And again, everything we do in construction is sight pictures. Get a picture of what it looks like when your bucket is dumping in the center of the truck. Notice my bucket is actually a little more towards the back side of his box, but that's allowing the dirt to be centered in the truck. You're gonna wanna remember that for when you load in the blind. So anytime as a rookie operator that you're up on a pile loading into trucks, you really want to be paying attention to these sort of things so that when you're in the blind, you know what's going on even though you can't see. And then it becomes a game of feel. And you know, we're all used to that because we're operators. 90% of what we do is operating in the blind by feel, right? One last little thing here, we are gonna fill the back of this box pretty good, but at the same time, we're not gonna stack up against the tailgate. And that's always a good practice, especially when you've got these tailgates where he doesn't have turnbuckles on. We don't want to put, you know, 10,000 pounds right up against that tailgate. Heaven forbid one of his tailgate latches lets loose. You know, that's how you kill people on the highway. So while we will load the back of this truck up, we're not going to stack against the tailgate. You're not going to see me pile high right up against the tailgate. We're going to let that pile kind of taper off as we get to the back of the truck. Another important thing you want to pay attention to, especially as a rookie operator, is the kind of box you're loading. So this is an aluminum box. I cannot scrape the the top rail on this box and clean it up aggressively, or I'm going to bend the snot out of those side rails. And the way you can kind of tell is by looking at the welds. A lot of time the welds on aluminum look a lot messier than your steel boxes, and generally your aluminum boxes aren't going to be painted at all. They're just going to be raw aluminum. And so it's important to know that, because we can't put concrete in an aluminum box. It will rip it to shreds. You don't want to stab your teeth into an aluminum box. You will absolutely punch holes into it. And then you obviously can't clean side rails like you can on a steel box. You have to be very gentle. So it's also really, really good thing to know what kind of box you're loading to account for that. Now, this is what a properly loaded truck looks like. We've got an even pile right in the middle of the box. It tapers down. We don't have a ton of weight on the tailgate. And now, just for making sure that our driver doesn't have any issues with DOT going down the road, we're just gonna make sure that that pile isn't sticking above the side rails, because that's what's gonna glue DOT in, that he may be overloaded. That's gonna prompt them to pull him over a little more than they regular would. So that's loading a truck, an on-road truck, from on top of a pile in a little more detail. As always, I hope this has been helpful. Go ahead and give your driver, you're good to go. Go ahead and give your driver a nice little honk. And just be kind, guys. Your truck driver's doing the best they can all the time. Just be kind. Sometimes you may need to help them. You can throw your bucket down in the box and give them a push off if you need to. But again, aluminum box, you need to be careful there. So, as always, I hope this has been helpful. We'll catch you guys on the next Down and Dirty.